Welcome to season 2 of the Human Design Profiles and Entrepreneurship podcast. I'm your host, Chantel. I'm a 1-3 manifesting generator, small business strategist, and author of the Aligned Action series of books for solo entrepreneurs. Thanks for joining us today on the show, which is an active learning experiment, how we experience entrepreneurship as individuals. Each episode profiles a human design enthusiast / business owner who's here to share about their introspection, how their personal profile lines have influenced their entrepreneurship journey, how they use what they know about their profile to set intentions as entrepreneurs, and what this looks like for them personally in the implementation phase, in the decisions that they make on a daily basis as business owners. Today, I'm connecting with Kristell, a certified life and wellness coach and human design guide, empowering her clients to unearth their magic, taking action to change what isn't working in their lives to make way for more of what is. One of the greatest joys in Kristell's life has been training and developing individuals in the corporate world, in the studio, and in the classroom. True to her manifesting generator energy type, she has experienced a number of pivots throughout her life and career, following the path of leader, teacher, and coach for over 25 years. Have a listen while today's guest, Kristell, a 1-3, shares her story while you read between the lines. So, Kristell, our charts are similar. We're both 1-3 MGs, so this will be a fun and fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
So let's compare notes a little bit. Do you have a defined emotional solar plexus center, or are you undefined there?
Defined.
Okay, cool.
It's actually my authority.
Amazing. Okay,
Yep.
so with that defined center, understanding your emotional wave has got to be huge. How did you learn to connect with that?
So a lot of it involves writing down something that I feel I want to engage my energy with, right? So I lately have been using this example of last spring. I was like, oh, I'm going to take pickleball lessons. My neighbor signed up. I wish I would have known. I would have gone with her. Accountability often being key, right?
Yes.
So I was like, oh, dang, her class is full. Google, whatever. Lots of stuff had already started or was full or whatever. So I was like, oh, there's one. It's on the other side of the city from me, like easily a 45-minute drive. It's at 7:45 at night. It's a Monday. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, that's fine. It's $55, whatever. So I'm like, okay, before we jump in, let's just write it down. We're just gonna write it down and we're gonna come back to it in a day or two. And if it
Okay.
still feels like a yes, then we'll sign up. And if it's full, then it wasn't meant to be. But that allows that emotional wave to kind of like that the FOMO left, right? All of the stuff had to kind of settle. And then the sacral can kick in with like, or And it was like, I looked at it a couple of days later and I was like, actually, there's nothing I would probably like to do less than drive across the city at 7:45 on a Monday night in the spring in Calgary, where who knows what the weather's going to be. And so what'll happen is I'm going to miss the class more often than not, or I'll have all Monday, I'll be like, should I go? I don't know, like this whole dialogue. And if I miss it, then the self-talk turns into you wasted the money, you didn't follow through, you did it again, like all the stuff about making mistakes, right? That it was a
Right.
failure, shame, shame, guilt, guilt, yada, yada. So that's the process that works for me is just kind of let's set it aside, have a method for me to record the things that I feel attuned to do. Free master classes are a great example of like, yeah, I'm going to sign up for the thing. I'm going to learn. That's the one in me. I'm going to investigate. I'm super curious. I'm deeply into this. And then well, I didn't do it. I didn't follow through. I did the first lesson. I never finished, whatever that is, right? So a mechanism to come back to it later. And then the emotional wave is clear. So the sacral can kick in with that yes, no.
Do you write all of this in the same journal or just like kind of anywhere?
Yeah, like a notes in my phone. Sometimes I'll bookmark a page, like even add a book to the Amazon wish list, right? And come back to it later instead of feeling like I've got now this giant to be read pile that I'm like, oh, well, that you don't want to read that anymore. You're over that.
I was just
Right?
thinking I should go through my Goodreads TBR.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like the library, I'll put books on hold and then
Yeah.
get them and maybe not read them right away, but then I get to see them and like feel the energy of them and decide if that's something I really want to engage with. Then maybe I'll buy it. Right?
Oh, that's interesting that you say that because I do a lot of the library holds and I'll pick up the book and then it's sitting on my nightstand and then I hold it again and I'm like, this is historical fiction. You don't read historical fiction. Like, what attracted to you about this book that you put it on hold? You went and picked it up, like, you brought it home. Why?
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I'll notice just a little bit of a mismatch there where I must have had like a sacral ping at some point,
Yeah.
but then when I pick it up again, that is gone,
It's
you
gone.
know?
Yeah,
And
well, I might get a book recommendation in a conversation or a networking meeting or something. And instead of like adding to the cart, right? And then the regret later of wasting the money, like whatever that internal voice is for people, I will put it on hold at the library. And then I can choose to remove the hold or whatever. If I get it, great, right? But then I'll
yeah,
get the book and be like, oh, okay, I'm not really into this anymore.
yeah.
You know, super excited in the moment to hear about somebody's like great new read, but later.
So with the emotional authority and then also having a defined sacral, how do you find that those work together?
So it's always this like this exercise in patience, which for men gens is often quite difficult,
Yeah.
right? We move quickly, we pivot fast, we're, big energy, all this kind of stuff. So this like patience, trust, giving that space, whatever that is, a lot of verbiage around, it feels like a yes right now. Can I get back to you?
Mhm.
Giving myself an out to not show up because nobody wins when a generator or a manifesting generator show up half-hearted if
Mhm.
they're not into it, right?
Yep.
And really like, yeah, giving that emotional wave some outlet, right? Whether that's like go for a walk and think about it, give yourself the space to feel it out, go through the wave, and then let the sacral kick in. The sacral speaks in sounds, right? So sometimes it'll just be like that's a no. That's a solid no. That's not like a woo, right? So any of those noises that sound like maybe, the sacral doesn't say maybe. The sacral says uh-huh or uh-uh.
I have to tell a story. I once had a boyfriend who figured out maybe a couple months into our relationship. He's like, when you say maybe, that means no. And I was like, oh, I never really knew that about myself, but
My kids say
actually,
that all the
that
time.
is true.
My kids have always said that. When mom says maybe, that's a hard no. Yeah, maybe not so much anymore, but yeah, my husband also is a 1-3 man gen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, you can see the books behind me,
Mhm.
right? Between the two of us, like, yeah, learning, researching, getting super curious, but also he has the capacity to sign up for things that then a few months later, are like, I don't have the time or
Mhm.
energy, right? Like, I'm not showing up, and I am actually mad about it or frustrated by it,
Yeah.
So, and then neither of us win if we're both showing up frustrated. So, between the two of us, seeing that energy at play has been really fascinating.
So, speaking as a human design guide, can you contrast the defined emotional solar plexus center with my chart, which mine is undefined?
So, you're likely going to have way more emotional clarity in the now than I would, right? So, when you may still pick up other people's emotions on a certain thing, decision, project, whatever you're engaging your energy with, but you probably know how you feel quite instantly. If you're sad about it, you're probably going to remain some variation of sad. Whereas I will go the full roller coaster of like, no, now I'm actually mad. And then, oh, I'm kind of relieved that this happened. Like now I'm grateful. And they're very like, oh, yeah. And then I'm going to land it. And then I'm going to land it like grief.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm going to run through angry. And anger and I I don't know if it's a woman thing. We don't always show our anger.
Mhm.
Right. So yeah, anger, I don't like to land there very long. Also, I'm an Aries, so I'm a little bit fiery. Your sacral is going to kick in way faster with that yes, no, this, that, A, B, right? So
Yeah.
the universe delivers you something, you select it, you engage your energy with it, but I've got to like ride that loop. Yeah,
Mhm.
and there's different emotional waves, so those feel different based on what channel is defined out of the solar plexus too. So if it's connected to the sacral or if it's connected to the ego, if it's connected to the throat, those are all going to feel different. They could be very level and then have a drop. They could be very level and have a spike.
Mhm.
They could have like a heartbeat kind of looking line. They could be very steady and not even really realize they have an emotional wave.
That's my partner. He's a 4/6 MG and he's got emotional authority and just like consistent all the time and always content. I'm like, what
Yeah.
is that like?
Yeah.
Because for me, my sacral authority is like constantly like, nope, nope, nope. I find my no a lot faster than I find my yes. And it's like a whole different experience, I imagine.
Yeah, so I find it always interesting because I do use human design as the underpinning for coaching. Like other coaches might use disc profiling or Myers-Briggs, right? This is the framework with which we coach around. So, yeah, I just always find it fascinating how that kind of shows up because often for clients, I mean, I don't coach at all around SMART goals. I want to know your vision. Like, paint me a picture. Tell me what it looks like. What do you want to feel? How does it feel when you get there? I don't want to hear like I want to get the promotion. That's not the kind of coach I am. So often the goal or vision starts with not this. Like I know it's not this. This is the no. So then how are we calibrating towards the yes?
Yeah.
So I love that
Fascinating.
your no shows up faster because to me that's just like not this. No, this is
Yeah.
not it.
And so, as a 1-3 yourself, you have pivoted a lot along your journey.
Mhm.
Tell us about that journey and what led to what.
Yeah, so I with manifesting generators and 1-3s double down on that really. There's this golden thread when you look back at your life that'll make sense in reverse, that nonlinear path, right? So there's always this golden thread. Mine happens to be teacher, leader, coach. So everything that I've aligned with career-wise has always come into that kind of golden thread. But in the moment, when I was in my 20s and putting myself through university, I was teaching dancing and then get out of university and I wind up working for a financial institution and wind up getting promoted to assistant team leader. And of course, that job has a ton of coaching involved, like to develop the team, right? Go on mat leave, come into like mortgage brokering because the bank had put me on a course. Well, that's teaching and coaching people on getting into their homes and finance and all this kind of stuff, right? Carry on. I'm a parent as coach. I have 2 kids and coaching shows up in how I parent them. And then I land in like this fractional executive virtual assistant work. And pre-pandemic, I think I had 5 clients at 45 hours a week combined. That's 5 part-time jobs, really.
Mhm.
Dabbling in this, doing this, whatever, creating processes, teaching them how to use them within their business. Sometimes helicoptering out when the project was done. Sometimes it was years of engagement, right? And so there's a tendency also to like hide in the background and prop other people up and learn a ton from what they're doing. So then I can decide to apply it to myself, like my own business or not. But that tendency to like, I never know enough. I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to, right?
Yeah,
I have to keep
sounds
researching.
familiar.
Yeah. So then, I mean, if I sat down in a traditional interview and they were like, why did you jump ship after 3 years? Oh, yeah, there was a stint in the middle there when my kids were small that I taught preschool and I was an educational assistant at a private school. And, that's also teacher, leader, coach. I'm supporting a teacher in a classroom. I'm teaching kids how to read. One of my favorite things, by the way, is teaching kids how to read because it's like you've been given the keys to the palace. They love that look on somebody's face when it all clicks, which is part of why human design is a system that I really believe in.
I was going to
Because there
say,
is, yeah.
human design is very much like opening a book when you get your chart for the first time. And
Totally.
I think there's just something about certainly our one-line process that loves discovering in that
Yes.
way. And sounds like we're both readers in real life.
Yes.
I'm sure there's a link there as well. I heard you as you were talking about your journey mention the negative self-talk voice that comes up. I think that's probably louder for us as 1-3s. Would you agree?
Very, very.
So, how do you manage your inner voice? How did you maybe change your self-talk around making mistakes and getting comfy with that as a 1-line, 3-line?
Well, one, it's just this huge awareness of like, whoa, I'm
Mhm.
allowed to close the book before it's done. I'm allowed to disengage my energy with a relationship that is no longer serving me. I've learned whatever I need to learn from this job. I'm just packing it into my little, I always use the analogy of like a spiritual fanny pack. Got my little spiritual fanny pack and I've just tucked something from this experience on in my fanny pack. So that was one. Two, I think it was a Rebecca Campbell book where she talks about bouncing out gracefully.
Okay. I never heard
So, right, not being like, screw this isn't for me, like flip the
that. Right.
desk, peace out, I'm out, bye. It's more like this is no longer a fit.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And really like being okay with that potential tension, right? The potential conflict, having
Mhm.
the conversation around the conflict, which is again part of the work I do as a coach is overcoming obstacles with clients in our session. So they've got this opportunity to practice.
Mhm.
Like, you want to do this thing, you want to get to this place. What could get in your way? Because for me, often it's myself, right? And then it's the maybe like not enoughness, the shame of like, well, I've screwed all this up before. It was all a mistake,
Yeah.
right? So, Yeah. And also the words in the profile lines aren't the nicest, right?
It's
Like I don't know
true.
about you, but I don't have the greatest relationship with the word martyr.
Correct.
I have an image of a particular person in my life who I do believe
Mm.
is a martyr, right? And even role model sounds great, but there's a lot of pressure with being a role model. I always say, I don't think a professional athlete or a celebrity movie star would want to be, especially when they mess up. They're like, I never signed up to be a role model. I just wanted to be
Sure.
a hockey player, right? I didn't really think about kids looking up to me and all this stuff, right? There's a lot of pressure there. I really do believe our words are our magic wand.
Mm.
So if we're using these words that feel kind of sticky, then what's a better phrase than investigator, martyr, than hermit, networker, whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. Did
Yeah.
you rename 1-3 for yourself, or have you renamed any for clients?
I often will let people do that for themselves. Like, so let's pull up some synonyms or whatever. Mine is much more like curiosity,
Mhm.
empowerment, teaching, readiness. So, yeah.
Yeah. Would you say developing this new relationship with your inner voice was a conscious aspect of your personal development? Was this a line one investigation, or was this a 3-line experience that led to that?
It was like a really beautiful combination of both because
Okay.
it's like you're right in the quagmire of something, right? Where you're like, oh, it's happening again. I'm feeling this bubble up around I'm making a mistake or it's a failure or whatever. And then it's like, where is this coming from? Like, where am I feeling this in my body? How am I reacting? What do I want to do? For me, it's a tendency to want to get the heck out of here,
Mhm.
right? Like if there's any kind of conflict, it's like I need to go move. I need to go like yeah, go for a walk or go like, okay, maybe I'm going to look at buying a new house. Like maybe we literally need to move. So for me,
Mhm.
there's this tendency to want to like just get away from that discomfort. So sitting in it for a bit,
Right.
that awareness around sitting in it instead of jumping out.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cool thing about that 3 line too, we're always so quick to talk about the mistakes and the negative side of it, but because we've engaged our energy with so many different things, there's that trial and error process to how we've done things. We're really fascinating to other human beings.
It's true. Yeah.
I will often have people be like, "Oh my gosh, you've experienced so much in your life." Yeah, like I didn't know you did that. I didn't know that about you. Right? Because to us, it's just like, oh, I don't really talk about it because it didn't seem like a big deal. Or,
Or that was like 17 experiments ago.
yes.
So it's not fully front and center for me anymore. Yeah, I relate to that so much.
Mm,
I will have people tell me, you've lived a lot of lifetimes.
hmm
And I mean, in the spiritual sense, probably, but
hmm
also in this lifetime, yeah, I have. I've done a lot of different things. I've lived in a lot of different places. I've had a lot of different jobs. I've packed a lot in because the cycle of trying those things out is often a lot shorter for me
Yeah.
than someone who's not a 3-line or someone who's not an MG. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that career path I just talked to you about, if we think about, like, I started teaching dancing when I was about 17,
yeah.
and we landed at coach by 47.
Mhm.
Like full time, I'm in coach at like 45, 47, right?
Right.
It's 30 years of my life. That's all the pivots that I went through.
Hmm.
So yeah, sitting in a traditional job interview and they're like, tell me why you only stuck that out for 3 months. Tell me why you didn't continue with mortgage brokering. Tell me why.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, really did screw this up, right? Like it really doesn't look very good
Mm.
on a resume. But
Hmm.
again, I don't know. That's just me,
Yeah. As an
right?
entrepreneur, I am trying my best to never have to do a resume ever again, in
Exactly.
part because it certainly doesn't fit on the acceptable 1 to 2 pages. And yeah, it's true. Confronting that is not really fun. Even when you have made peace with it yourself, the outside view on that can be a real challenge.
Yeah. I speak a lot on human design about the difference between labels versus tools. We're so quick to just slap a label on something and be like, oh,
Yeah.
well, everybody's crazy because it's a full moon. That was such a Scorpio thing to do. So I don't just want to give somebody like, you're this name. And so now that's what you are, right? Human design really is an experiment. Been using the analogy of you're handed a lump of clay and
Yeah.
you're molding it and you're playing with it and like you might find some little jewel within it and how you use that jewel is up to you, right? But it's really like a constant playing, manipulation, experimentation, and what are threes good at? That's why when you were like, oh, I wind up having a lot of 1-3s who are also human design guides. That's why, because we're
Yeah.
great at this experimentation, especially the older we get, the more familiar we are with that unconscious side, right? Like,
Yeah, that
yeah.
resonates. Is there anything that as a 1-3 you're currently experimenting with? Like what is really exciting to you right now?
So there's a lot of conversation happening in my coaching sessions with friends, etc., around structure, creating freedom. So being very aware of like time planning, having a planner, reflecting on the week. I sat down this year and really made out like a quarterly plan with
Mhm.
quarterly goals and an annual plan and all that kind of stuff. So I'm loving the freedom that comes with saying that doesn't fit with my Q1 goal.
Right.
I'll let you know that might be more of a Q3 thing, right? So I've got this overarching theme for Q1 that is actually very line one of me,
Yeah.
very investigator, that if it doesn't fit in that bucket, it makes it a much easier no. It gives me a much better way to bounce out gracefully.
And
So
is it the first time that you've really planned out that far ahead?
yes,
Okay.
because although I've been coaching in one way, shape, or form for 25 years, this entrepreneurial thing is new to me. I've been in the background of other people's businesses and helped them do it, but I've never really, right? It kind of was like, let's throw spaghetti at a wall and see what sticks,
Yeah.
experimenting. And now it's very much this overarching kind of plan.
Yeah. I've noticed for me, if I try to plan, a year is almost too far ahead for me. My sacral will make promises now that like the rest of me can't keep. One of the things I've been working on is it's okay to rewrite my goals every quarter. It's okay to take what I learned from that first quarter and then incorporate that into the next plan.
Mhm.
Because if I batch too far ahead or whatever, then I wind up with problems later
Yes.
on. But of
Yeah.
course, we all have a slightly different
Well,
relationship with that.
I
So,
guess as a point of clarity, the goals are more quarterly.
mhm,
Like I can
mhm,
see, and I'm starting to understand like summer isn't a very busy time for coaching,
yeah,
right? So I'm starting to see these like I'll have time in Q3 to kind of look at this and deal with
mhm,
this more creative stuff. And I'm really hopeful. Like I envision being able to go do it out on the deck, right? And in the
fun.
sunshine and all that kind of stuff, right? So
Mhm,
the year goal is more of like a feeling. Remember, I go
yeah,
back to the like, what does it look like? And so I don't know. For me, there's often a lot around like my peace, which is very manifester of me, protecting my peace and having the freedom with which to do so, right? So there's that vision of like being able to do my work from wherever I am outside having fun, etc. The other thing that's come up is my Q1 goal is going to be a little late. It's not going to happen by, the end of this
yeah,
month.
yeah.
And my birthday's next week, so I was like,
So
I want to
exciting.
do this by my birthday. I'm going to sit this exam by my birthday. Well,
Mhm,
circumstances out of my control are making that push a little late. So of course that bubbled up with the like, of course it didn't work out. Of course it like that failure piece,
mhm.
mistake. And I'm like, but wait, like it's late. It's a little slow. It was outside of your control,
Yeah,
right? Like it's okay. It's still gonna get
right.
done. Just might
And
happen like in May or April.
at the end of the day, who cares? Like,
Exactly.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I have to
Yeah.
remind myself of that all the time. It's not like you have like stockholders that
Yes.
it has to be done by this certain time. If you wrote it down, like, yeah, it would be nice to have it around that time. But if it's 3 weeks later, who cares? It's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine.
Exactly.
It's a lot of
But it's
like
so it's
reassurance, self reassurance.
totally and permission.
Hmm.
This is something I often hear about human design is like, oh, it gave me so much permission,
Yeah.
right?
You'd
So
probably hear
it's
that in
like,
about half of the episodes of this show.
and like from whom? Whom are you getting this permission from?
Right.
Your inner voice, yourself, like your interface with society. It's funny how quickly that, like, oh, here you go again, you messed this up,
Yeah,
right? Comes up.
totally.
But now that kind of, I mean, really understanding that that second line is our shadow self, right? So looking at it and being like, I see you because what we bring into the light doesn't have a shadow.
Yeah.
I see what's happening here. Yeah.
Just to clarify for anyone listening, I think by second line, you meant the second part of your profile, right? Like,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, the
Not two,
unconscious side,
not two line. In my
not two
case,
line.
it's a three. Yeah.
Yeah.
That unconscious number, shadow self, whatever you want to call it, inner child, right? If you want to sit with it and be like, okay, yeah, I understand where all of this kind of stuff that I've reacted badly or however, it's coming from
Yeah.
that second line. Yeah.
So thinking of the rest of the chart, you have a defined throat in your design.
Hmm.
So do I.
Hmm.
You have a number of other full channels to other centers. Me too. What has knowing this about your design changed about how you present yourself or how you market yourself in your business?
Yeah. So I'll go back to the fact that for much of my professional life, I've hidden the background. I've propped other people up, and I'm reluctant to speak about what it is that I do. Public speaking is probably one of my biggest fears. It
Mm.
is also one of my biggest gifts. So the more that I can speak about how human design has changed how I am with myself, or say as a mom, like that's been a big one, how it's affected my relationships, the more I speak, the more people are like, oh, okay. Like as a branding, it's like, this is how it's been applied. This is how I've done it. Yeah. I always love looking at the shape of someone's chart too. So, like, I'm looking at mine right now, and it's got this like rainbow umbrella kind of
Mhm.
situation, right?
Mhm.
So, the throat connected, spleen, solar plexus connected. It's got this like vibe of like covering or protecting.
Mm.
So recognize I'm like, okay, that's a theme for me in my
Yeah,
life, like that maternal whatever. And then I've got this root sacral connection, right? So for me, that's the more grounded I am, the more calm I am, the more quickly my sacral can kick in. So I
that's
just
so
love
interesting.
just looking at the shape of people's charts. If it didn't look like it did, like if you had a kid, like, is mine a rainbow? Is mine a mushroom? Is mine a
Sure.
whatever? Like, think about it as art.
That's so fascinating to me. I've never thought about it that way. Um, do mine. What do you think? What does mine look
Well, you have so much definition in your chart that to me it just looks like an anchor. And I'd
like?
be curious to know if you feel sometimes like you're open on this side, that if ever in your body you almost feel like there's blows on one side of your body, like a blow, like a punch. I
Hmm.
wonder if you ever feel like, you've been knocked by something physically. I don't know. It's just my own little way that I play with it.
That reminds me of I had a Reiki session done once, and she said there's like an anchor right at your solar plexus. That's twice now that that visual of anchor is brought to me in that way. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know about the punch. I'll have to think on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, to me, sometimes, I think about people with the very open top of their chart, like there's a lot of pressure that's coming in from the top.
Mhm.
And like, okay, how do you feel on windy days?
Mm.
Are you getting a lot of air
Yeah,
blowing around and picking that up? Or people that are open in the bottom of the chart, like, how do you feel when you're not centered? What do you do to center yourself? Because you must feel very off balance.
yeah,
Right? I just get fascinated. Not that this was any part of my training, but I just love the look of the shape of stuff sometimes. Like, okay, you've got a straight line of everything in this kind of little arch, but it's like you're missing the one part of the anchor that would finish it. So I wonder if it
right.
ever feels like a
The
like a
missing,
body blow.
that feels like feeling like you're missing something is something that really
Yeah.
resonates. I've always felt like that because of my hanging gate 23. So I always
Mm,
feel like that one is a really strong kind of like, where's that 43? Where's that piece of the puzzle? Like
hmm.
that it feels resonant up in that area
Yeah.
of the chart. But yeah, I'll have to reflect on that. It's
Yeah.
interesting. You've used a lot of visual metaphors.
I am definitely a visual learner. So I remember when I did my coursework for human design, which I've done with a number of different people. So I feel like I've kind of got a dabbling of a lot of different things,
Yeah.
a little experimentation. I remember being like, this is really overwhelming. Like, how am I ever going to remember this? And I just remember like the visual of a layer cake, like a
Mhm.
wedding cake. So first we're going to build the foundation around energy type strategy, not self theme. And then we're going to build,
Yep.
and then we're going to build. And eventually we're going to have this beautiful cake, which is how that's the underpinning of my Demystify Your Human Design kind of program. Because I really don't do readings, because to me that just feels like me dumping a bunch of information. It's me giving you a bunch of labels, and we're not actually integrating. We're not playing with that ball of clay, right? So the whole thing is like 4 sessions or more. We can always add on, but at least 4, and with a week or 2 in between to go out and like, oh, how is this showing up in my life? Super curious, right? And it's always amazing to me, like someone might come in with one vision of how this is human design is going to change their life, and all of a sudden they're like, I'm starting with my marriage. Like, I'm starting with my relationship with my husband and how we communicate or whatever. Yeah.
The first thing that comes up for me hearing that is you've decided to lean into a 3 line element rather than a 1 line element, as opposed to here's all the information, which I don't know about you, but like I find people come to me for information. They
Hmm.
sense that 1 line quality and they like learning from me. 1 lines, you have this gift of, I've heard it with you with wordplay. There's this gift of being able to explain something simply because we have such a grasp of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be easy because I get asked all the time about my human design offerings. And I'm like, I don't have human design offerings. I don't do readings. I don't do human design coaching. For me, it's like 10%, maybe 5 to
Yeah.
10% of what I do when I work with clients. So what I'm hearing is that through your program, you are leaning more into the 3-line side. Experiment with it. Take this time in between, see where it comes up, explore it slowly, build that understanding over time rather than go to the book version.
Yeah. And I'm super hesitant to even say, I mean, we will always start session 1 off with strategy, right? Maybe get into authority, not self-theme. We're doing the energy type stuff big time. But I'm not going to say, okay, next week we're going to do your profile numbers. I want you to come back in and be like, okay, so I tried this stuff. Here's what's coming up for me. How do I fix it? That's usually the word I get.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, it's awareness. So let's look at other elements of the chart that might be feeding that need to fix it, or, what is really important to you about that? And let's see where we are. So, yeah, it really is this play. I'm getting closer to 50. So it's not lost on me that I'm way more comfortable with experimenting. Still reluctant to show up, going live on Instagram or doing a speaking on Instagram still is a bit scary to me. So my account very much looks faceless if you go to my Instagram, right? And that's something I'm ooh, tiptoeing towards the edge of wanting to play with.
Right.
Right.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that you recently led a workshop on human design for entrepreneurial ease, which is a concept that certainly listeners of the show are very into. So if people listening could take out their notebooks for a second and write something down, can you give advice for what would you say to each of the profile lines to help them find that ease?
The session wound up being a bunch of very new, they'd never really done human design at all. They might have heard it as a bit of a buzzword. So we really tapped into energy types. And of course, everybody on the call was generator man gen. So it was a nice kind of here's what I'm seeing or here's what might be showing up. What I love is so ones come off confidently and you can't fake that work. There's you're not meant to stay in the background. You're knowledgeable. You need to speak about it. So you sell through this lens of that foundation, that security of I know this to be true. And so the branding is all around the security that you have in the knowledge of the thing that you're selling. Twos have this passionate, they've tinkered on this thing, they've gone deep into the thing. There's this passion that they've engaged their energy with it. So they're often a lot more aesthetic. There's a creativity to how they would brand themselves. Maybe they're great photos or right, how it looks is going to feel very juicy to them. And that's this expression piece of the thing that they've hidden away that they're birthing into the world that they can express. Threes are actually really meant to express themselves through a sense of humor, right? You and I have spent a lot of time today laughing about things that seem like a failure. So being yeah, I kind of screwed up. This thing happened. I learned from it. Here's what I learned. So being really aware of the fact that every disappointment that you've experienced has enriched your life. And people, again, find that fascinating. So kind of being yeah, this happened, magnetizing people through that laughter. Fours are really meant to express themselves through their heart. These are the networking people, right? So they are drawing people towards them. My son is a 4. So I've always referred to him as a border collie. He's constantly rallying the troops together. He's a 2-4. So yeah, this being in your heart space, putting the heart back into your business, selling through that heart experience and focusing less on the head. 5, this is wisdom. This is practical solutions with which to save the day. Right? You see things in a different way. You have a profound grasp of the solution. So yeah, really selling from that place. 6 is being in tune with the long-term needs of other people because that's that role model energy. So it's very educational. Yeah, it's not just selling a product, it's selling the deep understanding, formal teaching kind of process. Make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. Thank you for getting into that. One of the reasons I do the show is that I want to give people a different way to learn about human design than just maybe taking in if you were line 1, this on kind of things. Hearing people talk through it, I just find gives like a different complementary understanding. And so one of the reasons I host the show is that I want to not show up as the expert on it, but shine a light on everyone's unique experience. And so when I have people on the show who know a lot about human design, enough to lead and guide on human design themselves, I know that someone listening is going to have like a really special takeaway from listening to that.
Part of why I'm so keen about entrepreneurial ease, I think, is that I've spent 10 years working in the executive virtual assistant space. So behind the scenes in other people's businesses and watching them learn from other people who might be very influential in that space, but they're telling them to do something in a way that really isn't aligned for them.
Mhm.
So if you're a four and you're showing up trying to do something very logically and very knowledgeably, you might be better off to just really speak about the heart-driven part of your business and what got you into it and why is it important to you, and just leading with that heart space, because that's what people are drawn to.
Well, I'm grateful to you for being here. We could probably talk forever, but we're going to flow into our closing ritual for
Mm.
this show. So I'm holding here the custom human design affirmation cards created by Christina from Global Juice HD, and I've got the 1-3 cards in my hand. If you're ready, you and I will take a deep breath in together and
Mm.
let that go. The card that is coming up today is I am here to become an authority. I can trust how much I know. How can I help myself feel confident in my knowledge?
Okay, the only way out is through. The only way out is through. Okay, if you're my daughter, F it, we ball, right? Like just get in the game and play, right? And that's right back to that experimentation. Play is experimentation. We're learning so much right now. There's been a recent study about kids not playing riskily. They don't play with risk. Everything is so controlled, and how much benefit there is in kids going out and making mud pies and, bumping and bruising and breaking an arm and whatever, like trying, moving their bodies, right? That's play. And so, yeah, just get in the arena and play.
For everyone listening, where can they connect with you?
KristellCourt.ca. Here's my website. Find me on Instagram, Kristell Court. I'd love to hear from people. Could talk about human design endlessly.